If you're dealing with any digestive symptoms and your PMS symptoms are really lousy, or if every time you get your period you have these magnified digestive symptoms show up, in this video I'm going to help you understand why this happens and give you some steps you can take to improve it. And the thing that's going to be really weird is that it's going to make sense. This is going to be fun.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
Now, if you've been dealing with some significant PMS symptoms for a long time, trust me, I know what you're going through. He doesn't know what you're going through. Don't let some dude tell you that he knows what you're going through when you're having PMS issues. He doesn't. As a woman, you have a lot of very complex equipment that allows you to do this amazing thing that other humans cannot do. This reproductive process where you actually can build a whole other human is unbelievable. Guys don't have that equipment. Guys are like skin and a remote control, and that's about all there is to guys. But as a woman, you have this complex equipment, and to understand what's going on with this PMS scenario, we need to understand that this equipment is complex, and when it comes to resources in the body, it's expensive to operate. So this whole reproductive cycle can take a lot of resources to go through. So what I'm going to do is, in the description below this video, I'm going to put a link to a study that they did on the level of energy expenditure that increases around your period. And this study showed that there was a significant increase in energy expenditure during your period. So that alone should help us understand that this process is expensive. It basically costs money when it comes to resources in the body. And it showed that these really increased around the period because of this complex cycle that has to take place. And another study that I'll link below showed a significant increase in gastrointestinal symptoms around that period. And the number was like 73% or something that experienced some type of digestive discomfort either before or during their period. And the most common symptoms were bloating, nausea, diarrhea, constipation, and even acne. And I view acne as a digestive symptom. But to understand why this happens, we need to understand some basic digestive function. So what happens is when we eat food, our stomach makes hydrochloric acid, or HCl. And this HCl is meant to help us acidify and break that food down. And once the food is acidified and it leaves the stomach, it goes down here into the duodenum, which is the first 10 inches of the small intestine. And that's when this gallbladder squirts alkaline bile down onto that acidic product and helps neutralize those acids. So when you have this acid product meeting this alkaline bile product, when those two things collide, it creates a sizzle, and that really helps us bust that food apart and get all the minerals and all the nutrients out of that food. So both of those sides of digestion are very important to happen in order for us to access the nutrients that are in that food. That's why we eat food, so that we can get the nutrients out of that food. So when we're looking at this period that's taking place, this cycle takes a lot of resources, but so does this digestive process. This digestive process takes more resources than just about anything we do. We need resources and minerals to be able to make that hydrochloric acid. And if resources are very low in this system, that can stress the body out and restrict the ability for this bile to flow correctly. We'll get to that in a second. But what's important to understand is that when resources are needed for this digestive process and resources are needed for this cycle, well, if the cycle's coming up and a lot of the resources are going towards completing that cycle, is it really the period's fault that all of these digestive symptoms show up? I think that maybe it's not. The thing about this process is that it's very common for someone not to be making enough stomach acid. And it's very common for things in our world today, like stress hormones can do this, some foods can do this, toxins, all these things have the ability to thicken this bile so the bile will not flow correctly. So if someone doesn't have enough stomach acid being produced, or if their bile is not flowing correctly, they're not getting both sides of that digestion that create that sizzle and really help us get all the minerals and nutrients out of that food. And if we don't have these resources that are needed to make this digestive system function correctly, and if we don't have the resources that are needed to complete this cycle that needs to happen for the menstrual cycle, well, then there's going to be some haywire going on between both of those actions. So I'm not saying that this is a medical fact, but from our experience working with clients, we see that women that have a lower blood pressure tend to see more of these PMS type symptoms. And when you look at your blood pressure, you can get an idea of the minerals in the system. So when we're looking at that blood pressure number, it's giving us indications of the level of minerals, glucose, protein, and maybe even filth and toxins in the system as well. But if you can look at your resting blood pressure number, and that top number, the systolic number, is lower than 112, that can be an indication that minerals are lower in the system. And if there's not enough minerals in the system, you might not have enough minerals to make enough hydrochloric acid. And if there's not enough minerals and other nutrients in the system, the symptoms that can come up during your period seem to be able to be magnified for a lot of women. So I'm also going to put a link in the description below for a study where they showed a mineral intake difference between women who seem to be bringing in more minerals through their diet and the PMS symptoms that they would experience. And the symptoms really decreased when they were bringing in more minerals. So this is an interesting study because we kind of see that a lot of people don't have access to those minerals when they're not digesting their food correctly, because they're not getting all the minerals and nutrients out of the food that they're eating. They may be eating them, but if they're not breaking them down, it's almost like they weren't really bringing them in because the body doesn't have access to those minerals. We need to digest those minerals so the body can access those minerals so the body can utilize those minerals. So when they're not available, a lot of actions can't get completed the way that the body really wants to complete them. And when that's the case, a lot of those symptoms seem to increase. Now, I'm going to link another study below that was on estrogen. And it showed that when there was estrogen dominance, that a lot of these symptoms for PMS seemed to get magnified. Now, that's very interesting because we understand that estrogen going higher has the ability to thicken this bile so that it won't flow correctly. And estrogen is a stress hormone, and when the body doesn't have enough resources to function the way that it wants to, it can raise these stress hormones like estrogen, and when estrogen goes high, if it's thickening up this bile so that it can't flow correctly, there's a lot of trouble that can come from that. If a person is making enough stomach acid, but bile is not flowing well enough to come and neutralize the acids as they leave the stomach, well, they're going to continue through that intestinal tract in that acidic state. Well, this stomach acid is made to help us digest proteins. Well, guess what your intestinal tract is made of? Yeah, it's protein. So it's going to digest a hole in your intestinal tract and you're going to leak cheeseburgers all over your body. So the body doesn't want to do that. So it brings all the water that it can into this system to cool off those acids and then rush it out the back door and we get crazy diarrhea. So this lack of bile flow can be one possible cause for this diarrhea symptom. If a lot of resources during that digestive process are now going towards this reproductive cycle and to handle all these things that go on during your period, then there might not be enough resources to make this hydrochloric acid. Now, if there's not enough acid to really acidify that food, it moves through the system much slower when it's more alkaline. And it's moving slower, then it can get dry and hard, and then we can look at this constipation issue. So there's a lot of digestive problems. If there's not enough stomach acid, the food will kind of rot and ferment, and that can create a lot of gases and pressure and increase this bloating thing that we were talking about. If bile's not flowing, that can restrict basically our main detox pathway, and if the body can't detox correctly, it'll try and push some of those toxins out through the skin, and then that can lead to this acne thing that we were talking about. So you can see that there's a lot of digestive functions that need resources to happen, that needs to have everything working correctly in order for them to work correctly. And when they're not working correctly, all of that can get magnified when a lot of the body's resources are going towards this reproductive cycle. So we just feel like in a lot of these cases, especially if someone's blood pressure is really low, that there's likely already some digestive malfunctions going on and they're not really breaking the food down enough to get all the minerals and nutrients out of that food. So if a girl can improve these digestive malfunctions, then more resources can come in, and then what she experiences around her period can be a whole lot more pleasant. And chapters 3 and 4 of my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, kind of walk you through figuring out which aspects of digestion may not be working correctly for you and what steps you can take to improve those. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free. And that'll walk you through that process of figuring out, are there things here that need to be improved to create improvement for this whole situation. There can also be a connection between what we're talking about here and these painful period cramps that a lot of women experience. So if you want to understand that situation a little bit, jump over right now and check out our video on understanding painful period cramps, and that'll kind of explain to you where some of these minerals are going in the wrong place and how that can create a really magnification for those cramps. I can't wait to hear about your results.